Good morning. The Public Service Commission will come to order. Before we get started today, I just have a few announcements to make. Commissioner Michael Richard is not with us today. He is concluding his term as the president of the Organization of PJM States over at the Waterfront Marriott. It was a good position for the state of Maryland, for this commission, and for Commissioner Richard personally, as the PJM markets have undergone a lot of change over the past year, with a change in executive management, change in the capacity markets, and a number of other changes. So we were glad to have Mike as our president, and he will be turning over the reins at 10 o'clock, about 5 minutes ago, to a commissioner from Kentucky to take that role. I'd also like to recognize a new employee that we have on staff, Mark Riley. Is Mark here? Mark. Welcome. Mark joined us recently, just about a week ago. He came from the Inspector General's Office, OIG, at the Department of Transportation, where he served for quite a while. He will be one of our public utility auditors now in the accounting division. Prior to serving at the DOT, he was at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds, where he served as another project manager and quality assurance specialist. So, Mark, welcome to the Commission. We look forward to having your expertise on board. With that, we have minutes to approve from our last meeting on October 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Mr. Secretary, the consent agenda, please.
Before we start, Mr. Chairman, we're going to defer one item on the administrative agenda. It's item number 5 today to a later meeting.
Thank you.
We have 3 items on the consent agenda this morning. Item number 1 is SQF LLC filed a notification regarding the proposed transfer of control of SQF LLC to SDS Tilson Investor LLC. Item 2 is Broadview Networks, Inc., filed a revision to PSC Maryland Tariff Number 2. It's its intrastate access service. And item 3 is Sunwave USA Holdings, Inc., filed an application for a license to supply natural gas or natural gas supply services in Maryland.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have questions on these 3 consent items? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 1, I move that we note the transfer of control of SQF LLC to SDC Tilson LLC. For item number 2, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of November 1st, 2019. And for item number 3, I move we grant the company a license to operate as a natural gas supplier in Maryland for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary, the administrative agenda.
First item on the agenda, item number 4, is Avalon Harbor LLC filed a request for approval of an energy allocation system located in Baltimore, Maryland.
Thank you. And do we have counsel for Avalon Harbor with us today? We do not. Mr. Greger.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. James Greger on behalf of staff. This item concerns a request filed on May 13th, 2019 by Avalon East Harbor LLC for approval to install an energy allocation system for a 400-unit apartment building that will be located at 555 President Street, Baltimore, Maryland. Public Utilities Article, Section 7-304B2, states that an energy allocation system may not be used for direct billing of energy costs to a tenant of an individual dwelling unit unless the Commission approves the system in accordance with this subsection. COMAR 20.26.02.01 further specifies general approval criteria for an energy allocation system. Namely, 1, approval may be granted upon demonstration by the owner that the system results in a reasonable determination of the cost of the energy use within a dwelling unit. 2, testing and inspection of an energy allocation system may be required by the Commission to make such a determination. And 3, testing and inspection of any furnace, appliance, or other equipment used in conjunction with the EAS may also be required. Avalon East Harbor has contracted with Havtech Incorporated for the installation of a Dicon Power Proportional Distribution System, or PPD, an energy allocation system that will allow the owner of the apartment building to allocate to a tenant of an individual dwelling a portion of the cost of gas and electric energy consumed based on usage. Avalon East Harbor's initial application contained all information required under COMAR 20.26, and subsequent data request responses have given staff no causes of concern in regards to the system itself. The apartment building is still under construction, and the energy allocation system will be one of the last components installed. The EAS is expected to be operational by January 2021. Therefore, Commission staff recommends that the Commission approve the energy allocation system for Avalon East Harbor LLC, apartments in Baltimore, Maryland, subject to the following conditions. 1. Avalon East Harbor shall notify the Commission 30 days prior to the energy allocation system becoming operational. And 2. Avalon East Harbor shall demonstrate the energy allocation system's accuracy via test results within 5% standard prior to billing tenants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregor. Do commissioners have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably a technical question on the metering. These energy allocation systems, the required accuracy is plus or minus 5%, correct? But the standard for a meter, a regular meter, is plus or minus 1%, right?
Well, according to Comer, it's plus minus 2%.
2%. Okay, so 2%. Why the big variation in the accuracy? Because 5% is a pretty big potentially a pretty big deviation, and in this instance, this energy allocation system was tested at plus or minus 1%.
Correct.
So why is there such a big variance for an energy allocation system?
5%, that's what we used in the past.
That's what we use. What?
In the past.
In the past, right? I'm asking why.
Oh, I think because it's essentially a more complex system than just the meter. Meter itself is just, let's say, one piece of equipment.
Why? So I'm trying to understand why shouldn't the commission consider tightening that standard to a more robust accuracy standard? Maybe plus or minus 3%. Something. I see our chief engineer coming up. Maybe he wants to add some insight.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Borkowski for Commission staff. If I can get this to work. As Mike indicated, 5% has been used historically for staff to recommend to the Commission an energy allocation system. The primary reason why is these energy allocation systems are not metering systems. They approximate or estimate the usage, so they should not be expected to be as accurate as metering or sub-metering. And from what I understand, historically, 5% has been a reasonable approximation that we would use to recommend. Again, there is no COMAR standard for an energy allocation system accuracy. It's just based on historical use.
So, Chief Borkowski, I suspect these standards have been in place when we relied exclusively on electromechanical metering devices. I think they've probably been in place a long, long time, but now we have digital. I'm sure this is a digital system. I'm almost certain of it, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
So you would think the accuracy would be much more, much tighter. Even in this one, this one tested at plus or minus 1%. Is it time for us to consider updating the accuracy performance of those standards? Because if I'm a customer and I'm paying arguably up to 5% more than I should be paying over a period of time, well, I don't like the thought of that.
Unless you're paying less.
Well, or less, because if you're paying less, you're putting the burden on the other tenants in the building. And it's not fair either way. The tighter the accuracy, the better, Mr. Chairman, I would argue. And so why shouldn't we consider changing that 5% standard, which I believe probably has been in place for decades?
Well, certainly we could do that. In this case, hopefully it's a moot point because of the fact that the accuracy
It
has
is,
been
but it's before us now, so I'm going to use the opportunity to raise the questions, as is my habit.
Well, but with all due respect, we would still request your permission, your conditional approval today, and then we can take this back as a an assignment
So
to
I
look.
appreciate that. I'm not going to oppose this motion. So often my questioning is misinterpreted as opposition. It is not. It is informational for the commission, and I appreciate that. I appreciate staff's willingness to look into this because I think it's probably ripe for looking into, and I appreciate the forbearance of my questioning. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
So I walked by this building yesterday, and it's a mammoth building, 400 units, must be at least 20 stories tall. But this is the first time I've seen one of these PPD or EAS systems before the commission. Are they relatively rare, this technology, or are we planning to see more of them along the lines of the concerns raised by Commissioner O'Donnell?
I know they've been approved in the past.
Should we expect to see more in the future?
I imagine that we would, yes.
And the chief is back up.
Good morning again. To my knowledge, and we have looked through some of the past buck sheets, this is the first VRV system that we're recommending approval for an EAS in Maryland. It has been used in other states, and in fact, in our buck sheet, I think we indicated that it has also been used in Maryland before, but we're not aware of an EAS, a VRV system being recommended for an EAS system in Maryland. We could research that a little bit more, but we had no record of a VRV approval in Maryland. It's the first one.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious, obviously, as technology advances and we move away from old-fashioned master metered billing.
Chief, can I follow up? What is a BRB?
A VRV is I think it's a valve refrigerant volume system. And what this system is, it's like a giant heat pump, but it's only one unit, and it uses valves within associated with individual units inside the tenants' rooms or living spaces to sort of regulate coolant.
Okay, so this is a specific technology, but as staff counsel was indicated, we have approved other energy allocation systems
Oh yes,
in Maryland.
yeah. But this is the first time that this VRV technology that we're aware of approval.
I just wanted to clarify that because I know since I've been here, I've seen other energy allocation system issues come before the commission.
Yes.
So thank you.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, staff. Do we know if Avalon Harbor has any other energy allocation systems in Maryland currently?
We're not aware of any.
Okay. Have we given any notice or perhaps contacted the Attorney General's office to see if they've had any concerns about this approval or this request?
No, we have not. In general, the Attorney General's office really would only get involved if there were customer complaints. And that's not really something we would normally do with an application. We would recommend approval, and then if there are complaints later on, certainly individual tenants can go to the Consumer Protection Group in the Attorney General's office, to try to get their complaint resolved.
Okay. Well, if I could ask the staff, since the Attorney General's office uses a similar process that we use, it's helpful to them if they have information about the developer or the manager of the building before the complaints start coming in. So if we could just let them know that this application has come to the commission, they can collect whatever information they need from the company and move forward in whatever way they need to.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has Avalon agreed to the conditions that staff has proposed?
I sent our recommendations to their council last week. I've not received a response, Commissioner.
Do you have a sense of how they would demonstrate that the EAS how are they going to do that? I mean, you've recommended that they do that. Do you have a sense of how they would comply with that?
With the 5% accuracy test, Commissioner,
Yes,
that's a software-driven process.
that's a software-driven process. Okay.
Well, just one addition to that, we have requested to actually witness on site the accuracy test. So
Ah, okay. But you haven't heard back from them?
We have not heard back from them yet, Commissioner.
Okay. And I assume they're asking for this approval so that they can put the system in. I'm sure they haven't put it in yet. So I would ask that the staff continue to follow up and make sure that Avalon is aware of the conditions, that they're amenable to the conditions, and that they agree in writing to your conditions and to your request to have a person on site when they do the test. Thank you.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman? The buck sheet says that based on discovery responses, the expected accuracy of the system is calculated to be minus 0.01% to plus 0.06%. Is that based on the discovery response from the company?
Yes, Commissioner, as well as the technical manual for the system itself. However, once it's actually installed, then the actual installation and then other factors involved with the apartment building itself could play into the accuracy of the system.
I thought that was important because I think the accuracy of these systems is going to be well within plus or minus 5%, which is probably broad enough to drive a truck through. So.
Yes, Commissioner.
Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the energy allocation system for Avalon East Harbor LLC apartments in Baltimore, Maryland, subject to the following conditions. 1. Avalon Harbor LLC shall notify the Commission 30 days prior to the energy allocation system becoming operational. And 2. Avalon Harbor LLC shall demonstrate the energy allocation system's accuracy by test results within 5% standard prior to billing tenants.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Next item on the agenda, item number 6, is the Potomac Edison Company filed a request for a mandatory waiver of the requirements to obtain a CPCN to relocate a portion of the existing Messick Road, originally 138 kV transmission line.
And do we have counsel for Potomac Edison?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is a filing by the Potomac Edison Company requesting that the Commission grant a mandatory waiver of the requirements to obtain a certificate of public convenience and necessity to relocate a portion of the existing Messick Road Ridgely 138 kilovolt transmission line in order to accommodate the Greater Cumberland Regional Airport's runway extension project. In order for the airport to complete its runway extension, Potomac Edison needs to relocate a portion of its existing 138 kilovolt transmission line that runs from the Messick Road substation in Maryland to the Ridgely substation in West Virginia. Public Utilities Article, Section 7-207B4 I, mandates that for construction related to an existing overhead transmission line carrying more than 69,000 volts, the Commission shall waive the requirement to obtain a CPCN if the Commission finds that the construction does not, 1, require the electric company to obtain new real property or additional rights-of-way through eminent domain, or 2, require larger or higher structures to accommodate increased voltage or larger conductors. In this case, although at least one pole will be higher than the pole it is replacing, both the conductor and the voltage will remain unchanged. Moreover, Potomac Edison will not need to obtain any new real property or additional rights-of-way through eminent domain. Accordingly, staff believes the project meets the requirements for a mandatory waiver, and staff recommends that the Commission waive the requirement to obtain a CPCN for this project pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7-207B4i.
Thank you. Does counsel for the utility wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chairman, good morning, Commissioners. We agree with staff's recommendation. We're available to answer your question.
Thank you. Taking a look at the cost of the project, and it appears that the utility will be compensated. by the municipalities. Do I have it correct that 3.3 million is the total cost, but the Maryland portion is only about $500,000?
That is correct,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So the balance is going to be paid for by folks in West Virginia?
That is also correct.
Okay, thank you. Do commissioners have questions? Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission grant the requested waiver of the requirement to obtain a CPCN for this project pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7-207, small b for little I.
All in favor? Motion is approved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Last item on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, item 7, the Potomac Edison Company filed its petition for modification of its electric vehicle charging infrastructure pilot plan to include an off-bill credit.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. On September 3rd, Potomac Edison submitted a modification to its electric vehicle charging infrastructure pilot plan to include a temporary, voluntary, off-bill credit for net off-peak electric vehicle charging. Potomac Edison's filing requests that the tariff be effective October 18th. Staff requests that the effective date be moved to October 30th. By order number 88997, issued in January 2019, the Commission granted the petition for the implementation of a statewide electric vehicle portfolio. This filing is a modification to the electric vehicle portfolio the Commission has previously approved. The off-bill credit was not part of the initial electric vehicle pilot plan that PE submitted. Therefore, PE is looking for approval to include the off-bill credit in its electric vehicle pilot plan. PE is offering the bill credit because the EV-only time of use rate that the Commission requested in Order 88997 that each utility provide is still being developed by Potomac Edison. The off-bill credit will be used as a replacement for the time of use rate until 2021, when PE anticipates the TOU rate will be ready. The off-bill credit will be available to 500 customers, who have a company qualified EV charger. Staff requested this limit of 500 customers, and Potomac Edison has agreed to this. Staff would ask that the 500 customer limit be included in any tariff changes. These customers will receive an off-bill credit of 2 cents per kilowatt hour for net off-peak kilowatt hour usage to charge an electric vehicle. PE projects the cost to be $110,000. And finally, staff recommends that the Commission accept the tariff pages for filing with staff's proposed modifications with an effective date of October 30th, 2019, and direct Potomac Edison to file clean copies of the tariff.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the cost of $100,000 is over the pilot, 5 years?
It's over just so for this off-bill credit. PE projects only a little over a year. So that is not only that's administrative costs included.
Okay, to run the program.
It's not only for the payment to the customer.
Okay. Counsel for the utility.
Good morning. We accept staff's recommendation, and we're here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. It sounds like all the differences have been resolved. We did receive comments from Office of People's Counsel if they wish to speak, or the document could speak for itself. Do commissioners have questions?
I do.
Commissioner
Go ahead.
Herman.
So, the question I have is, until I read the staff comments, I couldn't figure out what off-bill credit meant, So, and I'm looking at the tariff, and I think I'm looking at attachment A, and I'm trying to figure out how are customers going to know they're going to get a gift card. It doesn't say anything about how, it just says they're going to get a credit, but it doesn't say anything about how they're going to get a credit.
When they initially enroll in the program, which we'd anticipate them enrolling through either when they are getting their initial rebate, they'd also enroll in the off-bill credit, or separately, if they can have a qualified charger already installed. We'd give them enrollment materials that would explain the process for obtaining the credit. We're anticipating that credit would be distributed on a quarterly basis, and we anticipate regular communications to the customer on the amount of usage, on what their net off-peak usage would be.
So they'd be able to have a sense, of how much they're accumulating as they go through a quarter. and say, okay, I accumulated $10 this quarter, $25 this quarter, whatever the amount's going to be, and then they would say, okay, I'll get my credit at the end of the month in the form of a gift card.
Exactly. We're anticipating a monthly communication to customers explaining what their off-peak and on-peak usage was and what the net would be, and at the end of the quarter, they'd see their total.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was intrigued by this notion of an electronic gift card, and it's an Amazon gift card. So it's kind of different, right? Why did the company decide to do an electronic Amazon gift card instead of just an on-bill credit?
We anticipated this question. We chose an Amazon gift card as opposed to a Visa gift card or a gift card you could use anywhere, because every Visa gift card or gift card you could use at any location, at least in our experience and based on our research, deducted in value over some period of time. So we chose Amazon instead because it never expired.
Yeah, but my question is, why did you do that instead of an on-bill credit?
Oh, I'm going to ask Neil Keating, my colleague, to come up and speak to that.
Good morning. Ray Valdez from Potomac Edison. One of the primary reasons is it relates to the reason why we can't yet offer EV only time of use rate yet, is we still need to develop the communication protocols and develop the interactions between us and the vendor that's going to be administering this, and then figuring out how to put that on the bill, and then figuring out the billing aspects associated with all of that. And since that takes time, the quicker route in order to get customers these credits is to do it as a separate gift card, rather than try and go through all the mechanics and issues involved with the communication protocols back and forth between us and our vendor.
So I noticed that the incentive here is about 60%, but the administrative and processing charges are about 40% of the cost of this $100,000. So the lion's share of this cost, even though it's relatively small in the scheme of things, is being eaten up in this gift card process. So that's why I'm questioning it. What would it cost to process just via an on-bill credit?
So we did not look into the IT mechanics of changing our bills to add an off-bill credit. So we don't know what the cost associated with that would be. We anticipate there would be some costs, and we plan to not incur those costs and incur those IT changes until we rolled out the official EV only time of use rate in 2021. We felt like we were still able to administer the off-bill credit program in an economical way because we have a third-party contractor assisting us with the rebate distribution, and that contractor at very minimal additional cost is assisting us with the off-bill credit administration. So we felt like this was still a reasonable way to approach off-bill credit distribution.
Well, let me ask you this: since this is a pilot, it's an EV pilot program, this is kind of an innovative way to reward the time of use customers because you don't have AMI. Will you report the results of this off-bill credit in the success or failure of this pilot criteria? I mean, you got to evaluate the pilot and report it to us, right? Will you evaluate this kind of off-bill credit process and report it to us with regards to the success or failure of this innovation?
Yes, we expect to be able to report on the success or failure of the pilot in every semi-annual report. We should be able to explain how many people have adopted the off-bill credit and the results to date in that semi-annual report, as well as when we propose our EV-only time of use rate, we would provide a explanation of how the EV-only or the off-bill credit program worked.
All right. How do we make sure that happens in the future? Some of us may not be sitting here when that reporting happens.
We certainly commit to doing that. We would think that would be an expectation. In order to get the EV-only time of use rate approved, we would need to prove out that our off-bill credit program was successful.
All right. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up to that, because this is, I think, of OPC, to to paraphrase OPC's comments, they call it an experiment within a pilot. No, we know that you're going to be producing some reporting during the semi-annual filings. Have you identified, like, as of today, maybe with the other parties, have you identified some of the areas where you'd like to learn information from this pilot? So, I mean, in other words, if you're going to write a report, and whenever the next filing is due, you should be going into the pilot with some idea about what you'd like to learn. So, have you already done that? Are you prepared already to have that information coming in so that when it's time to produce the report, you've got the information and you can do it?
Yes, we have a few different metrics in the filing itself that we want to study during the off-bill credit portion of the program. And then we also, on each of the semi-annual reports, we're planning to report specifically related to the off-bill credit program. Do you offhand know where we're going? So, go ahead.
Sure. Good morning. In the filing, we did want to study customer charging patterns.
I'm sorry, can you give your name for the record and then start over?
Sorry,
Thank you.
Neil Keating with Potomac Edison. In the filing, we stated that we wanted to study customer charging patterns and whether they'll charge their EV during off-peak hours. So that's a metric. Number 2 was evaluate whether the off-bill credit provides sufficient incentive for the customer to limit their EV charging to off-peak charging. Third element was determine whether the off-peak hours provide sufficient time to charge the EV, and then the fourth element was to use that to develop our EV time of use rate. In addition, in the reporting requirements that staff filed, Section 3A, 9A requests a comparison of homes offered a time of use rate, or in this case, we'd say our off-bill credit rate, versus homes that didn't participate in that, just to compare their energy use. So that would be something I would expect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 7, I would move that we accept the tariff pages for filing with staff's proposed modifications and its comments dated October 8th, 2019, and direct the company to file clean copies of the tariff revisions with an effective date of October 30th, 2019.
All in favor? The motion is approved. With that, this meeting is adjourned.